do not have other ways to do a better thing. Okay, so we just, because we cannot do something better, if we may know a consumer's utility function, then utility is actually a better measure for us to do. But actually, it's very difficult to use utility as a measure. So that's the best thing. We just adopt dollars or money to measure all the effect of the policy or the effect of a shock of the natural disaster, of the effect of some like technology invention. So I want you to know the reason why we use money or dollars to measure everything is not we desire to. It is because we have to. There's no better way to do that. So, understand what I'm talking about? Yes? No? Okay, I wish I have explained clear enough. So, how to use dollar as a unit to measure consumer surplus. So, when you were in your junior high school or senior high school, what is the very first time you came across this term, consumer surplus? When did you know this term? In your junior high school or senior? Junior? Okay, very young, right? So consumer surplus, abbreviated by CS, is the monetary difference between the maximum amount that a consumer is willing to pay for the quantity purchased and what the good actually costs. And what does it mean? Okay, this is the demand curve and the price and quantity. So the vertical distance or the vertical height, the height of the demand curve, what does it mean? The price. Yeah. Actually, it's not the price. It's, yeah, you may say the price, the maximum price. I, as a consumer, am willing to pay for this quantity of the good. Okay? This is the highest, the maximum amount or the price, because it's about my value, how I value this quantity of good or of good. So if I say, okay, if you want me to buy, say 5, the fifth unit of this good, I just think, okay, how much pleasure I may derive from consuming the 5th unit of the good. Okay, I think, okay, it's about, am I willing to pay $100? Yes. Am I willing to pay $150? Yes. Okay. Am I willing to pay $200? Maybe not. Okay. So the maximum price I'm willing to pay for the pleasure the 5th unit of the commodity bring to me. So it's my willingness to pay. Okay? So do you remember what we do in the game? There's a oh my goods, 老天鹅. Alright? And you just, if you draw a playing card, a red one, which means you are a consumer, right? And the number on the card times 10 is your value, is the consumption value. for that unit. Do you remember what we played in the game? Alright, so say it's 150. For example, if this is 150 and the market price, and if the market price is actually 100, if this is the market price, so by consuming this unit of commodity or good, I may save or I may earn this part of happiness or welfare. Okay? So I'm willing to pay this much. This is the maximum price I'm willing to pay. So since it is the maximum, which means if I buy this good by this maximum price, I will feel nothing good, nothing bad, because it's equivalent. Okay? My pleasure is equivalent to 150. But however, if I may buy this good by $100, I may save $50. Okay? I may feel $50 pleasure. So we call this as what? Consumer surplus. And because this is my demand curve, at the market price, I'm willing to buy this many units of commodity. And all consumer surplus for each unit, I may sum them up. And that's the reason why we call this triangle as the total consumer surplus. Okay. So by each unit, I may earn $2, $1 is $3 consumer surplus, right? I may enjoy this much pleasure, however, I got to pay this much money, right? So the difference is something I earned. Some good thing I earned. So, in the textbook, you will see the standard consumer surplus. But actually, this part is the whole pleasure we have. However, we got to expand. This is the expenditure. It's our expense on the good. So the difference is something we earned. We feel better. Okay? Alright, consumer surplus. And if the price of a good rises, say from 0.5 to 1, purchasers of that good lose consumer surplus by how much? So initially the price was 0.5, now it rises to 1. It rises to 1. So initially this is our what? Consumer surplus. But now the consumer surplus is only this part. So we lose A and B due to the changing price, due to the rise in the price. We lose A and B. Okay, it's easy. Not difficult for you, right? And so this is the amount of income we would have to give to the consumer to offset the harm of an increasing price. Once again, so we measure consumer surplus in dollars, in money, using money to measure, because all this differences is about money, price, right? So 150, 100 is about $50. So maybe $50, $40, $30, but 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, something like that. So it's all about money. It's all about money. And now, since the price goes up, and the consumer just lose his or her consumer surplus by A and B. So if we want to compensate the consumer because the consumer is harmed, right? Why we say is harmed rather than helped? Because he or she just loses the consumer surplus, right? Do you think you will be happier or less happy if your consumer surplus is lost? If you lose your consumer surplus, you will feel worse, right? So you need to be compensated. I need to give you some money so that you may be compensated to offset the harm. To offset the harm. But what about how to do that? How to compensate you? The harm to a consumer of a price increase is an increase in the consumer's income needed to maintain consumer's utility. This is one measure to maintain your utility. We cannot use an uncompensated demand curve because utility varies along the curve. Okay, let me explain to you what we are going to do. Once again, if now the price goes up from 100 to 150, then you will see we are harmed by this part, right? By this part. We are harmed by this part. We lost this part, consumer surplus. So if the government say, okay, I just compensate you this amount of money, do you think it's a fair thing or not? I mean, fair thing is by the standard of utility. We need to know this because do you remember this common demand curve? We call it Marshallian demand curve. So for each point on the curve, they correspond to different level of utility, right? So do you think this one is better, or this one is better, or this one is better? With the price goes down, the utility or the indifference curve would be higher, right? So these points provide us a better utility, a higher utility level, and this would be a lower utility level. So from here to here, we feel bad because the utility changes, okay? So we want to compensate, and we want to make the consumer remain at the same utility level. So if we use uncompensated, it may be inappropriate because points along the demand curve differ to each other in the utility level. Okay? So what can we do? We may need to use the compensated as I introduced to you last week. Yes, Hickshan demand curve. Do you remember Hickshan demand curve? So that the utility will be held constant. Okay? All right. Marshallian demand Hicksian demand. Which one is correct? Do you think? Which one is correct? This one or this one? The left or right? This one? Let's check, okay? Alright. If the initial point is at here, now the price goes up. So if I cut my consumption by this amount, so I move along H2, right? I move along H2, which is a Hicksian demand curve. And along this demand curve, I stay on the same indifference curve. Do you remember that? Because Hicksian demand curve is all about pure substitution effect, right? There's no income effect. Do you remember that? Okay. So the difference between the pure substitution effect and the total price effect. Substitution effect, total price effect. So the difference is about what? Once again, from here to here is the price effect, right? Without any compensation, right? So that we call it uncompensated Marshallian demand curve. There's no compensation. So the indifference curve for this one and the indifference curve in this one may differ. Okay? And this would be the price effect. And now we know this part is actually the pure substitution effect. So the difference would be what? Short memory. Price effect equals substitution effect plus income effect, right? So the difference between price and substitution would be income effect. So this part comes from the income effect, right? Alright, now the price goes up. What do you think your real income would be? Your shrinks, right? Your real income will be cut. You will feel, oh, I feel poorer than before. So your real income be cut, and you cut your consumption. So what kind of good for this one? Is normal good or inferior good? Normal or inferior? You got less money and you cut your consumption. It's normal good, right? Understand what I'm talking about? Because the reason why for this part, you cut your consumption again, you remember that what? The pure substitution effect is always negative. Do you remember this term? This law? And you see, when the price goes up, your consumption goes down. You consume less, right? So that is what we call negative. However, the income effect makes you consume less, more, even less. That is because your real income cuts and what? And you consume less. So this good would be a normal good. But in this case, let's check. From this point to the from here to here, the initial cheaper price to a higher price, the less price to a low price to a high price. And we cut, so by this part is pure substitution effect, right? Because it's a long Hickson. The Hickson demand curve captures the pure substitution effect, and this is the price effect. This is the price effect. From here to here, right? It's Marshallian demand curve. So this is the price. And the difference, substitution effect, income effect. So that the total, the whole effect, the total effect, the total price effect is this much. Pure substitution, income effect. All right, now the same as before. The price goes up, your real income will be cut. You'll feel poorer, right? So when you're poorer, but however you consume more, so this kind of income effect, which means the good is an inferior one, right? So this case is inferior. Or inferior good. So for normal good, the slope or the Hickson demand curve would be steeper than Marshallian. Marshallian would be flatter. However, here Marshallian would be steeper and Hickson would be flatter. Okay, let's take a break. It's 9:54. 10:10. What about 10 after 10? Okay. See you 15 minutes later.